I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First item is a review of the parking lot design proposed by Astorbuck Properties to be located adjacent to 50 South Buckhouse Street. Welcome back.
Thank you.
This is the third proposal.
Well,
I don't need to sit.
Yes.
After hearing the last meeting's comments and going through the process with the team I had, I decided it was time to change. So we hired Jiggy Thomas Schwabi to handle this for us. We also went out to the field and got hard estimates on what it would cost to do the project. Before we went through this further, I wanted to make sure it was the costs were feasible for us. So we have found they are. We went back to old friend of mine, Andy Tom, and we took another look at how we were proposing it, to incorporate all the comments that we got last time. So I think Andy has a good presentation for you. I'll let you take it from here.
okay. Thanks, Bill. Good evening. Andy Tom, Schwabi, we're based in White Plains. Planners, engineers, landscape architects. This is Maria Alfaro, associate. And we just want to kind of run you through the slides, which I think we're forwarded. So these are for the parking and streetscape improvements along South Buckhouse. Just to orient everyone, the parcels that comprise the overall site, 4 tax parcels, including 2 that have buildings, the 50 South Buckhouse, or the Trent building, 4 Astor and 2 Astor facing on the Metro North parking area, and the side of the parking lot is the wooded vacant parcels to the southeast, one which is part of this property, and then a small narrow parcel that is owned by the village of Irvington. So we looked at the existing topography and the existing zoning on the site. As Bill mentioned, we did some geotechnical studies, investigations this past June, both test borings and test pits on the parcel here. You can see by the contour lines that the land adjoining South Buckhouse is relatively level, and then it drops off to the back of, towards the back of 2 South Astor. That slope is going to be incorporated into the design of the retaining walls that will hold up the one bay parking area that is located on that site. The driveway around the Trent building is one way going this way, and that driveway will also be used to access the single bay parking lot. The B district incorporates the 3 existing buildings. These 2 vacant parcels are in the 1F-5 district. We understand that the original petition to you asked to change those lots to B so that the parking lot could be constructed. There was concern raised as to whether that would open up future possibilities beyond the parking. And after I look at the plan, I'd like to discuss 2 alternatives that we've been looking at to potentially narrow the possibilities, basically constrain that future use of current and future use to the parking lot to remove any concern that possibly could change in the future. So here's the single bay parking lot, not dissimilar to some of the schemes you may have seen before. Access comes off the existing driveway. So you go down the existing driveway and turn left about 50 feet down. Single bay of parking. set in the middle of this upper lot. 52 spaces are proposed, with 4 spaces tucked in the corner here as tandem spaces. This lot is proposed for the use basically of the residents, or rather the tenants of the Trent building, who are currently parking at other locations, including South Buckout, and it's predominantly people that will be there most of the day. Along with the lot, which is created, that level area is created by 2 retaining walls, one along the east side, one along the west side, to take up the slope. The result of that is that the surface of the lot is approximately 8 to 10 feet below the surface level of South Buckout. So it will be a stepped lot relative to the street, and as you're driving down the street or walking down the street, the cars will not be visible because of their lower elevation. There's a detail in the corner, which I will blow up a little. This is a cross-section through the lot. South Buckout is on the left. There will be a public sidewalk constructed along the full frontage of the lot, 5 foot wide, a planting strip, and then the wall. First wall, here's the surface of the parking lot, about 10 feet below the adjoining street, and then the second wall that makes up the grade back down to 2 South Astor. We've been looking preliminarily at the drainage measures to take care of the stormwater from the new parking area, because this is added impervious to the surface. And we're looking at a pervious concrete strip along the backside of the parking area to a drainage reservoir and connecting to a series of stormwater pipes underneath the lot, running the length of the lot, to store that water during a storm event and then release it into the existing drainage system on site over time.
Andrew, while you're on there, what are the height of the 2 retaining walls?
This is about 10 feet, and this varies because the ground slopes. On the west side, it's about 15 to 20 feet.
So the parking lot is 10 feet below the surface of Buckout?
That's correct. That's correct. Buckout slopes a little bit more. So it's 8 to 10 feet below the level of Buckout. So along in green, you can see the planting strip that would be comprised of a hedge along the wall, a series of street trees, the 5-foot sidewalk that will run along that entire frontage. We've retained the curb line, the existing curb line on South Buckout. We'll probably have to raise some of the curb because it's depressed over time. So this is a view looking south, and you can see the edge of the Trent building here, the portico, and the driveway going down and around. And the white building in the right center is the back of the 2 Astor building. So the existing lot is the wooded area just to the right of the street. And then with the removal of those trees to the wooded area to create the lot, you can just see the entry drive, and this is the only place that you can really see the level, because if you go further along, it steps down. So unless you're standing at the wall, looking over the wall from the street, you really can't see it. So you're entering the same way that people enter today, going into the lot, coming back out, and then this maintains as a one-way circulation system, so that when you leave the lot, you're going down and around as everyone who enters there does today.
So the parking spots on Buckout are going to be in the same place that they are?
Yeah.
There's going to be a 5-foot sidewalk and a 5-foot green buffer?
Minimum 5-foot green buffer. That widens out because the street is not exactly, the parking lot is not exactly parallel.
At the pinch point, it's 5 feet. It goes to 8, 10, 12.
Right. So if we go a little further along, a little further south on South Buckout, today during the summer, the woods are fairly thick, so you really can't see through. In the winter, You do see, because most of the material is deciduous, most of the trees are deciduous, you do see trunks, but you do see through to the view beyond. And when that's removed, basically you'll see the backside of the one South Astor residential building, and which is a taller ground building on the left, and the two South Astor warehouse building on the right. And if you happen to be right at this location, you can see between the buildings to the river as you would from the northern end. So looking at the greater site, we've continued the sidewalk and streetscape plantings all around, all down South Buckout and down South Astor to the bakery, and then providing for a connection to the Metro North parking lot. That sidewalk will continue across. There are active driveways in front of, two active driveways in front of the current building. Here and here, that sidewalk can continue across, so there'll be a curb cut essentially to allow those to continue to operate. Some of these trees, and there's a little planting area in this corner already, so all of those areas will be planted to improve the pedestrian experience going all the way along South Buckout down to the train station. We met preliminarily with the village administrator and the village engineer. And one suggestion that they had is that to pick up the sidewalk that was recently added along Station Road, that we potentially bump out the corner here and allow for a crosswalk there. So coming down Station Road, you can either cross or just land, come across, and then walk all the way down along the sidewalk.
Is the corner of the north corner where the yoga zone is that there are steps currently there that are close, not the bakery, but the north east corner of the building? Right there. That currently, when you're close to the building, there are several steps that go down. What happens here? I see the planting, but I don't see what happens in that corner.
Well, we've actually, in order to create room for the sidewalk, some of the existing edges are almost up at the curb. So to create room for that 5-foot sidewalk, we've borrowed a couple feet from the parking spaces in this area of South Buckout, and we actually proposed moving South Astor up. You can see this little sliver here, a little bit closer to the DPW buildings, where we're borrowing a foot here and a foot there to create space for that sidewalk. This would be all subject to village review certainly, but we believe that that's a way, and we can squeeze the sidewalk down to 4 feet as well if we're going in either direction. But we think that there are a fair number of people that walk in this direction. To provide them a sidewalk rather than having to walk in the street would be, we believe, a better thing.
Will there still be truck loading and unloading along there?
Along here? Yes. These are two active driveways for the tenants, and that will still be.
So just to finish my thought, I'm still not understanding the several steps that are right by the yoga place. Would they be eliminated because now, no, Bill says no.
No, they'd still be there. They would land in the sidewalk. Today they land almost in the street.
Right.
So the area that is currently street would be sidewalk, and that curb would be pushed out a bit. I mean, one of the conditions that exist in South Buckout is very wide there, even with parking on both sides. And when people have wider streets to drive on, they tend to speed up a little bit. So we a technique for traffic calming is to provide for narrower streets. So what we're proposing, as well as borrowing a couple feet on this side, is to have a detail. Is to add what we call a rumble strip in the center that serves as a median, but it wouldn't be a median. It wouldn't be a raised median because we still need access to this active driveway. But by changing the pavement texture within that three-foot strip, it kind of moves you over to the side. You're not floating in the middle. Right now it's kind of undefined, so you're floating in the middle of it. Now we'll direct people on this side and direct people on this side and hopefully slow people down in combination with the crosswalks. And here's those steps here that currently land at the curb. We may have to rework the steps a little bit to because we want to maintain this radius. We don't want to shorten this radius because people turn across here. So we may have to rework those steps to fit them in with the new sign.
So since these are still active driveways, the way you're reconfiguring it, would trucks pulling in clear the sidewalk so that people wouldn't have to walk out into the street to arrest
Yes.
trucks?
Yes, they have to play the sidewalk. They couldn't stand in the sidewalk. And the fact that there is a sidewalk would be a better indicator for them. Right now, there's no guidance, so they'll just pull in and stop.
How's that possible when the trucks that pull in there are sometimes bigger than 15-foot beds?
Well, this garage door, they may have to extend over the sidewalk. But
Because sometimes there are tractor trailers that come in there.
backing up to the door.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have
And the
to.
problem with that is that it blocks, sometimes as they're moving in, it blocks both sides of South Buckout Street right at that intersection. So that's something that, this is not, I'm just saying it's not going to deal with that problem, which is
That's
an
right.
existing traffic hazard problem right now.
I think that's an operations question.
You know, I've been asking all the tenants to limit their deliveries to straight trucks, non-tractor trailers. And I'm going to continue to do it. I'm not sure how legally I can enforce it, though, unless I guess the village does something that
Or in the lease.
is in the lease.
Everybody's already got his leases, it's a problem.
Next lease.
But I'll
Back
continue
to
to
the
push.
median,
Yes.
how wide is that?
This could be 3 or 4 feet. It also works as a painted strip, but the same way that people, or the highway striates the edge of the road, so it reminds you that you're going off the road, putting textured pavement, like a textured concrete with a little cobble surface, cobble texture, will help people to stay in their lane. But you can still drive over it, you can still plow over it.
So they're not going to be like little signs that say, stick to the right.
There could be a sign here.
I'm just wondering, because that kind of stuff, at least when it comes down to a lot of the village streets that have it for the sidewalks crossings, they just end up being knocked over.
They get knocked over, that's why they're plastic, so we can put them back up again. That's constant traffic issue.
But you're not encouraging people to stand on that. They're supposed to cross at that cross.
That's right.
Right
They're
there.
they're supposed to cross here. This is not a place to stand. Hopefully people think the path of least resistance. So some people will just walk diagonally because they want to. But at least there is a separated route for them to travel.
So the extension of the sidewalk goes to the bakery, and then you're right there at the Metro North parking
Yes,
lot.
the bakery is a little problematic. It's outside of our property, and it's also, they have a, just outside the door, there's a brick area, and then existing planters here. So what we propose is just to paint in front of that. I don't think you can create a sidewalk because that would narrow this driveway. I don't think you can move that. I guess you could if you lost the space, but so that's something we'd be willing to work with the village to find the right design down there. Because there's also no the platform is here, but everybody that's parking here is just walking in the aisle.
You said you don't own in front of that?
That's correct. I don't think so. The boundary is right about building face of the bakery.
So who owns it?
It's probably the village. I don't know where the boundary between the Metro North lot and the village right of way for South Astor is.
We have a license agreement with the village to utilize this space in here. And it's an annual renewable license
Or where the
agreement.
4 parking spots
Yeah.
are?
Right.
So in front of it is the same.
Yes.
So Larry, Marion, that's village, right in front of the building, might be village, we don't know.
I don't know the property we own. I do remember that the bakery was in for parking spaces?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to.
Yeah.
remember. but that's all right,
I'm not sure the meets and bounds of that.
Yeah. Andrew, a 5-foot planting strip, is that wide enough for shrubs and for trees? Will the trees make it on it?
Yes, actually, most city tree pits, not that that's a good recommendation, are 5 by 5.
Uh-huh.
But here, this is a continuous strip, so the trees have roots have room to grow laterally. And that is sufficient room for that.
So I think there's 52 spaces. How many net spaces will it add? Because I know there's some that kind of park along the.
You lose about 5 here, so it's probably 45, 47 net spaces. We're not taking any spaces off the street, but these are really the only spaces. And there's a couple of spaces that kind of perch on the edge here.
And do you have an estimated demand on the parking?
Yeah, as much as we can get. The more spaces we build, the more we're gonna take off the street.
Right. But do you know what the current demand is now?
Well, we lost,
Can I ask you, how is that, I don't actually believe in that logic, why, I mean, so your people might not be parking on the street, but does it stop anyone else, commuters, from parking on the street, right? This isn't actually fixing an issue of parking on the street,
Well,
it's adding more parking.
unfortunately, this is a work session right now, so we're not going to take questions right now, but we're going to have plenty of time for questions.
After.
So do you have any idea how many, like, say, cars are now parked on the street, or?
we don't know. I mean, I can go survey if you'd like. We just, we lost, as I told you, 30 spaces in Metro North. So, there's 30 to 52, that are gonna come off the street.
Bill, are all your spaces taken now? Is everything, are you rented out?
We have one spot that we're not renting because we can't park it. We're not,
Because what?
we don't have parking for it. We can't provide parking for it, so we're not renting it.
How many Metro North spots do you still have?
30.
Have we noticed, this is a question for village people here, have we noticed since you've lost 30 spaces, have we noticed an increased parking problem on Buckout or around since that?
Yes, there's more parking on Maple Street.
I'm sorry, on which street?
Maple.
Maple.
And they put some painted lines on across from our house, on the little circle drive, that's off South Buckout. We lost, 2 parking spaces there just because the police department wanted to put lines, because one neighbor complained. Didn't make much sense to me, but they're there.
So it's like in that little cutout area.
Yeah.
How big is the buffer zone on the south end?
There's a 20-foot, it's 20 foot wide. There are some utilities running in that from the one Astor building.
And you haven't shown any pictures of how that's going to be maintained. Is that just going to be grass, or is that going to be that buffer zone at the south end?
The buffer zone, it should be it should be low planting. It shouldn't be any trees because of the utilities there. It could be ground cover. Right now it's leaf cover for the most part.
Is the space between the 2 rows of parking, so the center aisle and the parking lot, is that the minimum width allowed? Is it the recommended? Is there a range that you can do in this?
The village provides for certain ways to manage stormwater, improve stormwater management, including narrowing pavement in parking areas. So this shows a slightly narrower space and a slightly not as deep space. So we believe this is safe, but it's not overly generous. The village's standard spaces are a little bit bigger. We've seen this space, this is 9 by 18.
Correct.
I think it's a standard space in most Westchester communities. The village, I think, was for 9 by 20. So we would propose that under that provision of the code that allows for reduction of impervious area, that we would show this as a narrower space.
And that's what's shown here?
Yes.
What about the space between the two rows of parking? So the space where the cars drive to
Drive
access?
aisle.
Yeah.
I think we kept that for.
And I think what Larry's getting at is we want to try to make sure that there's as much space off of Buckout Street as possible. And if you need to.
Maybe we might be able to take a foot or two out of that.
Out of the drive aisle?
Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah. Well, I don't know anything about recommended widths. I'm just asking where they are in the range of what's recommended versus what you can still live with in a parking lot that's not an active parking lot like a mall or something.
Mhm.
You know, imagine there's different widths you can accommodate.
Can the entire parking lot be shifted to the west?
To the west, there is a utility line that comes from the back of one Astor and comes across here. So we don't want to get too close to that line, so we're trying to shoehorn it in as best we can. But we'll sit with the village engineer and see if we can narrow that any further.
Are you 22 feet in the drive aisle?
Andrew, you probably don't have them or you would have shown them, but maybe you could describe what these retaining walls are going to look like. I mean, because a 10-foot retaining wall along Buckout sounds pretty big, and what's going to be at the other retaining wall? Or maybe you do have photos of the, maybe just do some elevation drawing?
No, but if I go back to this cross section. So it's 10-foot retaining wall on the inside. On the south Buckout side, it could be either, we need a 42-inch guide, so that could either be a fence or a wall at the top. So at most, it would be 42 inches along South Buckout. It's 10 feet on the parking lot side,
Okay.
and then 15 feet on the two South Astor side. So if you're driving in the parking lot, all you see is this face, which is 10 feet tall. And that would be a segmented.
Oh, but that's not what you're going to see from Buckout. From Buckout, you're going to only see what's next to the tree there.
One of the renderings they show.
And is that the same on that south end strip? Is that also about a 10-foot drop from the south?
It varies just a little bit.
But it's roughly that same.
Yeah. So here we
Oh,
saw the
okay,
fence.
okay,
At maximum, that would be a solid wall.
Oh, okay.
Some reason we want a fence.
yeah.
So the 10 feet is on the downhill side.
All right, and then where are you going to see that 15-foot wall from? Is it going to be?
If you're in the back of the two South Astor. And there's not really.
Are you going to see it from the train station, or are you going to see it from?
You'll see it in between these two buildings if you were to go by on the train, but you already see a 4-story building and a 3-story building.
Okay.
You'll probably see it from every second floor house on South Buckout Street.
Right, from our house.
Because we're uphill, just to
You won't
answer
see
your
it in the
question.
first floor.
Not the backside
You
retaining
won't see
wall.
the backside of that wall. And we'll see the cars parked in front of our
You'll
house.
never see the backside of the wall.
We won't see the backside of the wall, we'll see the cars parked in front of our house then.
I have a question about the use of 2 South Astor. I know the loft is the public, I guess, the rental space. Is that fully used? Is there more parking that's going to be needed for that building? Will that affect any of this plan? Does the use of loft, is that mostly in the evening? And
Nights
you
and
use Metro
weekends.
North?
It's nights and weekends.
Say it again?
It's nights and weekends.
That's the only time it's
Yeah,
leased?
unless we do a photo shoot, then it's only a couple cars. But it's, we don't do events during Monday through Friday during business hours.
So that you direct people to use the Metro North
Yes, at night.
station
Right.
at night? And the other floors, other than the loft floor, the use of that now or in the future, can you say anything about that?
Sure, it's the first floor is completely rented. It's rented by the Glassless Mirror manufacturing company. It's got 3 or 4 employees.
The what manufacturer?
Glassless mirror.
Mirror, yeah, glass.
Eileen Fisher uses about half of it for storage, and Black Diamond Construction Company uses 1,000 square feet to store materials and, over extra materials that he has from jobs.
And it's 3,
That's the second floor's parking.
the second is still used as parking.
That's not gonna change.
Well, my biggest concern is that we're now back to where one of my first concerns was that this development not look too much like a Safeway supermarket parking lot. And effectively, that's what we've got. What I'm seeing here is like lollipop trees, even spaced, and very little concern for the open. What happens, just to be able to see the palisades through the 2 buildings is not sufficient. What you're now seeing is the backside of 2 industrial buildings where before you had a green buffer. So visually, this is not working for me in terms of the kind of buffering that you're providing in the sample example. More specifically than just the fact that we're right back to kind of shopping center aesthetic, is that we had talked from very early on about the necessity of trying to keep as much green space on the south end between the lot and the closest neighbor, and now that's been reduced again to the narrowest lot. There had been some conversation about an exchange of ownerships that, or whatever, or sale of property rights. I'm not sure where we had left it into conversation to move the segment that was effectively village owned so that there could be an expansion of that buffer beyond 20 feet on the south. To say that there'll be 20 feet of scrub grass and weeds is not answering the neighborhood's issue with any kind of buffering. So I find that although I want to like this from the point of view of the service it provides to getting cars off the street, I'm still back to saying that I feel like we've just done a very large circle and come back to a point where the landscaping is just unacceptable. It may be maintainable, but it's not providing answering any of the visual questions or screening questions that I think came up from the board and from the neighbors.
I think that.
So to me, that's the biggest non-starter right now is I don't see how we get anywhere acceptable with the current. I know it's just a straw man scheme, so I'd say it's really gonna have to take some real focus to try to make this look in a way that the neighbors can accept it.
I do think that getting it lower is probably a big improvement. 'Cause it's, that the parking lot itself I think is lower than the original.
So I've always been about 8 feet down.
So I think that that's positive, but I think I agree. I think that, the last time we spoke, we kind of talked about kind of the green buffer in front of it, so, in that strip, I think it's just too small. And I think the southern border where we kind of, I think the biggest complaint that the residents have, the neighbors have, is that, we're kind of taking away, we're intruding on the residential area with business area. And, to me, the maximizing of that southern strip what's paramount. To me, it's half, but it's too small, but at least half, let's say. But I think a lot of it depends on what goes down there. But I think it so just has to be more space on the southern end.
But one thought I had looking at this is that where you do have spaces between the grade building and the retaining wall, what happens, and now I don't know if it's possible at all because I don't know what the back of the building is except for kind of a turnaround spot. I'm not sure what's back there underneath that existing retaining wall. But one can imagine that being built up and actually have screening in that area. Of course, it could be a much different kind of it may be a much different cost because you're now creating, depending how you do it, you're creating another planting space behind there. You could put screening in there and therefore block off one of the buildings, but you're not going to block off the whatever the name of the building is on the left, the condo building.
Could you
Well,
show
Hudson
a picture
View.
of that again,
Hudson
with those
View.
buildings Warren's talking about? shows those two buildings, the two South Astor and
I mean, I totally understand these are early, these are like
One South Astor.
maybe 3 or 4-year-old trees. They're not like mature trees, but of course it depends on what the species you're planting in that area is as to what you can expect to get out of them.
Well, we propose them as street trees, frankly, so that they are
Street
safe.
trees can be 20 feet, can be 25, could be slow, fast, could be sycamores, can be, can be redbuds. I mean, it's all over the map. So what you're showing here is something that's about equivalent to the current pear trees we have on Main Street. Maybe they're being shown at about 20 to 25 feet in this particular rendering.
No, I think I do appreciate the fact that now we kind of see the extension of the sidewalk and how it would kind of play into that part of the neighborhood. So, I mean, I think from our perspective, the biggest issues are there's too many cars parking on the street, hearing complaints we haven't heard new complaints from Maple Street and other areas of Sparrow Park, but we have heard that in the past, which is why I think we originally entertained this whole idea was to get some of those cars. And as Astor Buck has done a lot of work, redoing the building, it's obviously got more tenants and it's a lot more successful now. And we just anticipated the growth of parking issues, and hearing anecdotally now that it seems to be happening again, that they lost some of the Metro North spots. So I think that's one of the benefits, obviously, is just additional parking in the village, period. And then I think, one of the spots that is highest on our list of safety issues is South Buckout Street with the strange, ultra wide, street the way it is now. It's kind of a wild west of traffic, compounded by the trucks parking and then, have people drive around them. And then the fact that there is actually a sidewalk that goes all the way down South Buckout, all the way to Main Street. And people can walk on that, but who's going to do that when you can just cut through? So, again, we have the dangerous situation of people walking on kind of an odd road that was probably more planned for horses than cars anyway on South Astor. So I think that those are the positives, is that this starts to address some of those issues. I think with kind of the village's input, we probably could do more on addressing the safety issues on South Buckout in tandem with this. But I do think that the screening and the biggest issues for me.
Right, as you were talking, one thing I was thinking about was talking about anecdotally, I just go through there periodically, so I see things and mentally record incidents. And I know that I've seen recently a number of incidents where trucks are pulling in and out, cars are getting impatient, going northbound at the corner of, Station and South Buckout, and so they start to try to zoom around the truck as it's still parking. And then where it gets more problematic is where you start to have pedestrians at the same time, and so they're all trying to maneuver while the truck is trying to maneuver, and it's a recipe for a dangerous situation. Now, one thing, if the lease is such that you can't stop them from bringing trucks in at certain hours or certain sizes, maybe the requirement is you actually have to have the Astor Buck folks have safety personnel there, like a sidewalk, what do you call it? Crosswalk guard. A parking guard, that actually goes and manages the traffic when those incidents are going on, because frankly, the trucks are there every day. It's not like an unusual thing to see a truck or two trucks or multiple trucks coming in and out. So maybe part of what the village needs to do is say, look, we need a safety plan that's proactive, that isn't just saying, well, we can't do anything because the leases are the way they are. Instead, it's like, okay, well, part of the deal is you have to provide personnel to actually manage the safety of the parking trucks during normal business hours.
I believe that one of your former plans took those trucks completely off the street, right?
Never.
No, you could never do that.
Or they would further down or something?
We were proposing as part of this plan, if this gets approved, we would look at a facade rejuvenation plan, and we would reduce the loading docks from 1 to 2. From 2 to 1, excuse me. And,
But the facade would be
northern dock.
I mean, you should still have a dock.
there's 1 dock instead of 2.
I'd like to take off on your point, Mark, about the screening of the two buildings as well. And to look at that picture again, I was thinking about looking at the back of two industrial buildings, and what effect that has on everyone, the neighbors and people who travel through there. And I'm just trying to think of ways that make that interesting or less problematic than the way it is in that picture. So that's what you were talking about. I don't know what the answer is. But that's
You want a wall of trees? So
not necessarily. I mean,
We have a wall of trees.
I know what the problem is, but I don't know what the solution is.
Right, so I think you're suggesting, is there a way to put more trees closer to those buildings? Or to screen, like to screen the back of the,
Well, the gray building maybe,
Yeah.
but I don't know about the,
This building has parking behind, so there's no real place to. This is a low area. We could do some planting in there, but it's a little wet down there because of
you
this.
could just push that retaining wall back so that you actually have planting up at the parking lot level.
So push the, well,
push it back
try
5
to notch
feet.
it back and have planting up here.
That's, raise it up to near the parking lot grade, and it may not be that significantly different engineering wise. I don't know, I'm just talking out of school, but obviously there's a lot more fill that's going in there. But that could be a way of solving some of the screening. The problem that I have, to get off on Connie's point a little bit more back and forth, ping pong, is the rear of both of those buildings were not designed to be seen from the street. And all it takes is to go back behind them and look at them, and you can see that they're the backside of the buildings.
Yes.
So I think the front side is not that different.
Well, because what you're seeing is basically the back end of the building from what used to be a green view out. So it's a significantly, to me, it's a show-stopping change for the quality of the neighborhood. So that has to be addressed.
So I have the same problem. I don't know what the solution is now. So we've been talking about the look of the back of two Astor, the white one, which obviously Astor controls, and they don't control the other one. So to make that more attractive, is the only route to go is screening with vegetation, or are there other ways to make the back of a building that is, industrial or, kind of stark, to make it more interesting?
Facade.
There are all kinds of things. So I'm just saying, I know what the problem is, but I don't know what the solution is, and that would be something to pursue, in my view.
Graphics.
They're building gardens
Yeah, there
sometimes
yeah,
in
there
the
are lots.
city.
I mean, I traveled.
Wells and Clark.
No, there's.
I'm only joking.
So, I mean, looking at
They only own one building.
I'm sure you've
No, no,
considered
they're
this.
talking about their.
I'm not gonna try to figure out the answer. I'm
Maybe,
just saying,
maybe the other
people
let
figure
them
these
take
things
that.
out.
I'm sure you've considered this, I think the question was answered a while back, but it's not possible to make it an underground parking lot to cover, I am not, obviously not an engineer, but it would seem would solve, if we could keep your spaces, but they'd be underground, and then on top of that, there could be a planted area, but this may be either wildly too expensive or simply impossible.
It's not impossible, it's quite expensive.
And also, the problem is, just to jump in, you're talking about now planting the roof. And if you're planting with any kind of significant material, you need quite a bit different engineering solutions.
I think that's good.
So we're brainstorming.
I think it's a great idea, I just think that it's,
If you could wish the problem away, that would probably be the best thing, it just might not be humanly feasible to do it.
And the issue that's now been brought up by Brian and Mark about the size of that strip at the end, if that's adjustable, that would be a positive in my mind, obviously bigger, not smaller. And the nature of what's in it, obviously we know from the neighbors that there's no desire to have a park and chess tables, and we understand that, at least I do. But making it something other than ground cover, or something more positive than that would be on my list also.
what runs through that, that's a sewer easement or a water easement?
Natural gas. That's why you have to keep the roots away from it.
Do you know how deep it is?
probably just a couple feet down.
It's got to be sloping down, because the whole thing slopes.
Yeah, the whole thing slopes down quite a bit from that back corner.
And what's on it right now, it's,
Just scrub.
it's just, so there are some trees, but not.
No, I think it's pretty clear. It's leaf growth.
Oh, okay. Well, surely there's an interesting solution
Yeah.
that doesn't
So we could
interfere.
increase the buffer and put a row of trees in there.
Good shortening that end.
You know, just echoing what I'm hearing, I think with what Brian said, I appreciate the addition of sidewalks to head for safety. I appreciate changes on Buckout Street and Station Road to help for safety. But I think there's got to be better screening, both from the street, from the Buckout Street, view looking over, and as well as on the southern strip, either wider and or better. So that lots more hidden.
I would agree.
I think especially for me, it's even more on the southern side than straight on. The straight on is definitely an issue also, but I think something creative could be done there, but I think there just needs to be more mass or more space down the southern end.
I'd give up a sliver view of the Hudson for a block view of the parking lot.
I'm not sure, I love the idea, I often call it the lollipop trees at the Spanish home, but the taller trees don't necessarily seem to add a lot, whereas some more interesting, more consistent, yeah. Yeah, that's, right.
Yeah, but again, this is the first time that we've all seen this, first time you've gotten any feedback on the plan, so.
But the sidewalk safety development of that's part of major concerns of ours, major concern. Improvement in that, and that is, that's really goes a long way.
So to regurgitate everything, you'd like to see a larger buffer with more screening on the southern end. You'd like to see more screening to hide the industrial buildings.
Not necessarily vegetation, but something. Yeah.
Right.
One thing I was,
And the width of the buffer.
the one thing I was thinking, Bill, in terms of, wanted to jump on Connie's comment, which is the lollipop trees are one thing, but if you were to look at it in terms of more kind of integrated planting, naturalistic planting, maybe planting some native shrubs like amelanchier or something like that, that could fit in there, those would naturally get to 10 to 12 feet high, would fill in from the ground. You probably would end up not seeing the building. But you'd also have some differentiation of spatially of larger trees fill in. I mean, I know that you have this notion of the hedge right along but my notion of that hedge when I read about it, it's going to be a boxwood hedge right along the fence, which isn't really, to me, that's not going very naturalistic. Again, that's why it keeps feeling like a supermarket parking lot.
You don't want to prove it.
No, but certainly there's enough area there that you can have a whole mix of interesting planting and low maintenance planting that would still solve the problem for a good deal of the season in terms of creating some screening in the 10 to 12 foot height area.
Oh, thank goodness Andy's a landscape architect also.
And we have a very good landscape architect consultant for the village, so.
Is that you?
No.
It's Lucille Munch, you've probably worked with her, Andy.
These are amateur ones.
Lucille Munch,
I'm
I'm sure Andy's
I
worked
can't
with
get
her.
paid for that.
Yeah, exactly. So make sure,
Yeah.
Volunteer.
Yeah, volunteer on that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's.
So that covers it. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we can speak now?
Typically with work session is the first time now, because there's nothing to, I think you know what? Since I want to get feedback to them, I'm going to give everybody 2 minutes to speak. I'm not going to have everyone speak 6 times and tell me they take the project out of hand. If you have constructive criticism or issues, love to hear them now.
Okay. Andrew, can you back up to the aerial view, please?
Sure.
So we need to get someone by the mic, right?
Yeah, let me pass them.
When we get to the mics.
You really need 2 minutes, right?
Okay. So it seems a little unfair that we only get 2 minutes, but we'll do what we can in 2 minutes.
This is the first time anyone's seeing this, so.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So
Looking at this picture, you can see that it's almost predominantly covered with cement and cars, except for one little plot of land which is green, and the proposal here is to take that green plot of land and turn it into a parking lot with cars in it. We, the residents of South Buckout Street, purchased our homes in a residential neighborhood, not in a commercial neighborhood. We do not want a parking lot of any sort in front of our house. We don't want the noise. We don't want the danger of a 10 and 20 foot retaining wall that our kids can potentially climb over and fall over. We don't want to look at it. If, as mentioned earlier, if you are any higher than street level, those elevations that were looked at today are not representative of what we would see out of our windows looking down onto the parking lot. I don't believe that building this parking lot would do anything to help traffic or parking on South Buckout. It's a commuter area, there's a train station 2 blocks away. People are going to park on the street regardless, so we're not solving a problem for the neighbors. The neighbors don't want this. We're solving, I guess, a problem for the owners of that building. And I don't see how we could possibly say that we're going to both donate a plot of village land to a business and change residential land to commercial land for the benefit of that business. That I can't understand how we would even debate that, but that's me.
All right, I got to take a point of order here. I feel like that is not addressing what you said the context of the conversation was supposed to be, which is comment specifically about issues relating to this plan, not a rehash of the existing state of the neighborhood's disagreement with the project, which I think we're all very clear about. So I feel like what we're doing, we're wasting time here because it's not the context of what that feedback is about right now. When we have our first public hearing, that's when the public is invited to hear.
That's fine. But they're wasting our time because they keep coming back with the same exact plan.
No. They are wasting the board's time perhaps, but not your time right now. You guys are just here as witnesses to the conversation because it's a public meeting. I'm sorry to sound overly aggressive, but I just feel like I don't want to relitigate the core issues. We know what the core issues are. If there's something in this plan that's sufficiently different, sufficiently annoying, and not, has changed anything, because everything you've mentioned is the same with this plan or the previous two. That's correct. I think.
Yeah, the plans are almost identical as the previous
right,
plans.
so that's what I'm saying. If we're relitigating what has been talked about multiple times in public hearings and will be talked about as this moves forward, and if the Board of Trustees does eventually approve a zoning change, it's still got to go before the Planning Board for complete hash through in terms of everything.
Okay,
So there's gonna be a lot
that's
of-
fine. Then I'll apologize on our behalf because we are not familiar with the process and we just found out 2 days ago that this was even happening.
And that's fine. I mean, the process is always hard because we don't, that's why typically in a work session, you don't even allow comment. But I think if there's specific comments on the project that can potentially improve the project or put up new red flags or whatever, I think that's the most useful.
Yeah, that's the
right
key.
now.
If there's something that we haven't
And
seen.
I probably wasn't clear on that. And that's why I meant too, that there's going to be plenty of time to speak in the future, because this is again, the preliminary, the first time we're seeing this. I think I saw it for the first time yesterday or this morning. And we will, if this actually gets, approved, it'll probably be, 15 meetings more, especially because of the planning board, so.
Yes, thanks.
We need some good, some good constitutions to go through those meetings.
So specifically to the project, I'll keep it brief. When you're talking about screening, please also remember noise. It's not just about visuals, it's also the noise of 45 cars and alarms. And to bring that home, I just will play a very brief clip of the soil testing. One thing that came to our neighborhood in May, this was the soil testing.
For a week. 2 days.
3 days, that was just the soil testing. Secondly, you're talking about the sidewalk being a safety concern. I understand the sidewalk on Astor to the train station. I believe that is a needed sidewalk. The sidewalk on South Buckout Street on the other side of the street, the west side of the street, will go to nowhere. It will go to Dan Greenberg's house. We don't, in my house, we don't need a sidewalk to nowhere. It doesn't benefit anyone. The sidewalk need is really on Astor Street, and there is already a sidewalk on the east side of the street. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Could I just say, I just wanted to say one thing. I know you had mentioned that this all came about as a result of difficulties on Maple Street with parking there, and I just wanted to mention that I walk my dog around that neighborhood a few times a day, and I've never seen cars parked on Maple Street, so I'm not sure if has that problem resolved or I'm not sure, but I did want to mention that I don't ever see a problem on Maple Street, if that's something that could be considered.
I can attest there's a problem on Maple Street.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't just Maple. Maple was one that we have someone attesting to, but it's that whole Sparrow Park area because
Half Moon as well.
and Half Moon as well, because they basically come out here with the 2-hour spots, they keep moving them, and I think they were 6-hour, which we changed to 2-hour to try to prevent that, but, some people would rather get a ticket than have to move their car, so, or keep moving it multiple times a day, which also isn't optimal for anybody.
They would 2-hour move to 6 hours, so it's actually better.
Yeah.
At least in front of our house, it was always 2-hour when we moved in, and now
Right,
it's 6 hours.
because we were worried about that.
I've never not seen a spot in front of my house, and we live on South Buckeye Street, so I don't really know, I don't quite understand what the parking problem is. I mean, yeah, maybe I'm not home when.
I would say
when
2
you have
years
these
ago, we
parking
got a
problems.
dozen letters. Basically, once they started renovating Astor Buck and people started, coming, that was the issue. It was the 2-hour because everyone was coming out and moving them all the time, and they were, that was like when my kids were going to school.
Maybe the area's become overdeveloped. I mean, perhaps it's a residential area that's being overdeveloped, and that's what I think the philosophy has to be. When you
Part
think
of
about
the
it.
issue is we're not going back and rezoning, the main building, because that's already there. That's been
I
there
understand that.
much longer than those houses have been there. We're trying to address some of those issues that have come with a successful building owner now.
Look, again, I understand all of that, but you're talking about you are talking about rezoning. You're talking about rezoning what is now
Not
residential.
We already have the issue, is what I'm saying.
It's
It's not like we're
residential.
saying we're gonna put up a big commercial building there. With the Trump building or the
You're turning into a
Astor
parking lot, which is commercial use,
I'm-
residential area.
I understand that, but I'm saying that the cars aren't coming because we're gonna build the parking lot. The cars are coming because there's a building that was built in 1900.
Well, they're coming at my expense.
And not according to the planning board's memo from November, if everyone can reread it, because that says the cars are going beyond.
Maybe
I
I'll-
understand you don't want to hear it from us, but no,
I
we're
know,
very
no,
upset
I-
about this.
I-
We moved
I
here a few
completely- I
years ago to
understand
get away
that.
from urban sprawl,
I
not to move
understand.
into it.
But we're also not making a decision tonight, and when I hear from a dozen people that they have issues with parking, and then someone comes up and says, I could build a parking lot and take 50 cars off. Or 40 cars.
You're going to have other issues from us, let me just tell you that right now, honestly.
That's fine. I know. Last time you were here, you said you were going to sue me, so I understand that.
And it might-
That's the way this works. And this isn't a personal attack on you.
Well, I'm taking it that way, I got to tell you.
Okay.
Fine.
Yeah.
Reaver has the microphone. There's this person here with the microphone already.
I don't need a microphone.
No, but he's got the microphone.
That's okay,
in his
Kevin
hand.
can go before my good friend. Just wanted, Andy, did you talk about lighting in the?
I did not.
Plan?
I did not.
Okay.
They
That's,
wouldn't be
the
lighting.
issue the last time, and with the existing trees as they are, they not only block the wind during the winter and blowing off the river, but they also block the lighting from the ball fields. And once those trees are gone, there's nothing there. We're just looking at an ugly gray building. We're gonna have some serious light pollution coming right into the windows across the street. But I just wondered what your lighting plan was for the new plan.
It's not fully worked out yet. There would be lighting on the deck. It would be the existing Cobra lights on South Buckeye are about 20 feet off the street. These would be in that range off the surface, so they would be set about 10 feet above, so halfway down the height of the Cobras, shining onto the deck. So when we make a fuller submission, we will show them.
I think that I'd like to pick up on the one thing about the paths to nowhere. I think that maybe we need to see the larger, especially on the south side, seeing how it's connected with existing, context of existing sidewalks around Half Moon. because I do remember that was a major issue before about how the one way that was proposed was just to have a crosswalk right at the end of that south buffer area, then cross South Buckout to so people could walk on the existing sidewalk on the east side. And it seemed to be just another safety issue at that point. So we need to, I think we need to think of it in a little bit larger context. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, just to second what my other neighbors have said, we remained, as a group, we remained quite opposed to the project. And a couple of the issues which haven't been mentioned, I think one of the key issues is still the property values will go down. It's a nice project. I have to acknowledge that there are a number of improvements. I'm happy that, for instance, our north area, which is where the gas line is, no longer anything planned there. We were terrified about that. So I'm glad you addressed that issue. And there's some other improvements like the access, egress and ingress are both through the Trent parking lot. That's also definitely an improvement, safety-wise. I'm glad you're also talking about shielding of the lot visually. And I would just like to suggest, with respect to our northern margin, that something that seems to be effective and is also quite inexpensive are those bushes that they shoot up straight up, and they also expand wide, and we actually have them on our backside, and right now they're like about 25 feet. We're actually worried about to cut them off, but those skinny bushes that grow straight up, they seem to be a very good visual barrier, and I think they're probably pretty inexpensive too.
Okay. Well, we're familiar with the kind of old problems. We've addressed most of the current problems are similar to the old problems as well with the design. So I think that we'll hear a lot more about this in the future, I'm assuming. So you guys have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, also request for revised zoning for the Ardsley on Hudson train station building. The camera screen.
That was a tough answer.
No, it's your turn. No, I'm just kidding. Why don't you just give a second.
Hi, I'm John Michael DiGennaro. I recently, about a year ago, acquired the Ardsley Hudson train station. And in that time, I renegotiated the lease with the post office there. And I'd like to lease out the rest of the building. Supposed to be shown for about a year ago.
Yeah.
And we discussed the possibility of changing the zoning on the building, because it's railroad zone, to match the zoning of the buildings that are down here in town. And I'd like to see if that would be possible.
Is Bizarre railroad or business?
Bizarre is railroad. But remember here, I've actually got, in case you want to see it, I brought the zoning, so copies of the zoning for the railroad district. What?
It's been a couple of years.
Yeah, just in very summary fashion, what, oh, wait a minute, does one have my notes on it? Yeah.
Exactly
I'm
right.
sure everybody knows the building, but
I guess it was back in 2010, boy.
2010, wow. Time flies when you're having fun.
I know, 2010, that it would, the code that was amended, to essentially permit all of the uses in the business district in that building by special permit. There needed to be a special permit, but the list of uses was essentially the same as the list of uses in the business district, such as.
But it only applied to this station?
Only to this road, they paid us.
Just this one.
Oh, no, just, no, for privately owned properties located on, this is in very Irvington fashion, located on the east side of the railroad tracks between Main and Bridge Streets. So it was just.
But this was
just
the amount
different.
of what could possibly be done?
Well, no, I guess what he's asking is, could you rezone that, railroad station also into the railroad district, the parcel of property that's on into the railroad district?
What is it now?
1F80. I think it's in the 1F80.
No, I
the
thought it was
2F80.
railroad.
It's railroad.
I thought it was
Is it
asking
railroad?
to go to
This
business.
building is railroad, what we came up with when we looked at it.
But it has, so basically it's limited to railroad-related uses, which is what,
Oh, it's limited, it is railroad now.
And you want it to be the same railroad uses?
You know, it's like, what, like.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, but right now, the railroad, all that's permitted is railroad uses, except on their one parcel that I just described,
This is the other.
these other uses. So that what he's asking is that, I guess that special permit provision would also apply to that piece of property.
I think probably from your point of view, you don't care whether we zone it as business or extend this permit process, just so you are able to do something similar to what's done in this railroad station.
Yeah, no, it wasn't rezoned business, but what we did was we lifted it.
So,
Lifted
and it
business
doesn't matter to you,
regulations.
as long as the
Yeah.
result is the same.
As long as I can, have offices or
Okay.
some retail, or, similar as to what they do there.
So right now, they need a special permit for all of these other uses?
no.
Who's they?
They would.
This
the
one?
No, the existing building and
Right.
that he wants to be like.
Correct. Right
Existing,
now,
the Irvington train station building,
Right, needs a
Right,
special permit to
yes.
be able to do things, and we're likely to give them it if it's something that's within reason.
right, well, it's the planning board issues a
Right.
special
I
permit.
mean, my question, comes back to when we did our comprehensive plan, and I got a call from someone who lives in Hudson House saying, well, I see that you're, encouraging perhaps breweries to be in the railroad district, and I don't want there to be a brewery where I live in Hudson House. So that's something that most likely couldn't happen, even if we gave a special permit.
Well, you would have to, let's say you amended your zoning to allow breweries, in the business district, you could amend it to allow it in the business district, in the industrial district, but not the railroad district. They all each have their own. And that, so you could always do that.
but I think that gets to the heart of the discussion, maybe, if there is going to be a discussion about this request, which is that I think simply extending the uses that are currently in there for the Irvington station over to the Ardsley-on-Hudson station is probably not the right
Right.
final answer. And I say that because the very reason that the Board of Trustees did the business use, essentially what's a business use to the Irvington station, is because it's right there in the heart of the business district. The Ardsley-on-Hudson station is not in any business district right now. That's not to say that I'm telling you one way or another on what you should do, but I think what may be helpful, and you almost did it just now, which is talk a little bit about the types of uses that you see for this building, and then this board can contemplate, whether they're amenable to any of it or none of it or all of it. You know what I mean?
And the way you would do it would, I assume you'd also want to do it for special permit, that there'd be a C that says for privately owned properties, referring to that one.
Adjacent to
The
Hudson Road West.
The
Or
following are
whatever.
permitted, and you
Right.
would just put the uses that make sense for you. Because my guess is not only is it the uses that you might also have to modify like the coverage requirements and stuff. There was a very specific coverage requirement, it was 14% that I'm sure was based, because that building is exactly 14%, you didn't want to expand it. I'd be very surprised if your building is 14% of the lot, you know. So there'd be some other things that would have to be fixed.
But it would remain in the railroad district, it would just be a Class C.
But it's,
What you would do is, yes, create if you wanted to, create a special permit that would.
Wait, I thought you just said it wasn't in the railroad district.
I said it wasn't, I was wrong.
It's railroad district, but not.
But not Irvington
not-
Train Station Railroad
Yeah,
District.
So maybe it would be interesting to hear what you would like to do here.
Well, I have one tenant looking to open like an architectural office on the second floor.
How many cars do they take?
There's four
They didn't
employees.
take the trade.
There's 4 employees and
Will there be beer available?
Park on Maple Street.
You still would have
well,
parking.
let me address the parking issue.
Okay.
Along with the building, when I negotiated the deal with the MTA, I have the right to use this area, about 4,000 square feet, to build a parking lot with temporary pavement, just in case they have an emergency and they have to get to their line, so maybe a gravel lot or something refurbished.
Where is that?
That's right adjacent to the building.
Just north
So here's-
of the building.
Yeah, so here's the building, this would be the area here.
Okay.
So what is it now, undeveloped?
It's all just trees, there's like, not even trees, it's just brush, it's grass. Not trees.
Get a lot of specimens.
So can you see that area on that picture?
Yes, yeah, you can look at this, this
I
is
was
what
just trying to look
this
at
is what the MDA image said. This is the platform here. They basically said along the platform to put in is about 14 spots.
Wow.
Yeah. So right now they have 3 with the current building, and then we take.
Oh, the 3 that are post office parking, so you would just be extending that line.
Well, that would become the drive aisle, and we'd have 14 spots there, and there's currently trees there, so we don't have to worry about it. We're not touching
The
them.
screening there?
We're not touching them.
It's down below the road, yeah.
I'm not quite
Yeah.
understanding where this is.
Yeah.
The big picture that he has there, is it possible to see it on
Let
there?
me see if I can.
I mean,
It's just north of this.
It's,
This is the 3 spots here.
Can you look at it?
Lift it up a little.
You can put it right on the table.
yeah, so it's right on.
These are the current 3 spots.
There's spots right
Those
there.
are spots that are now used for the post office?
Here's the survey.
And you're also talking about putting the portico, whatever it's called.
Oh,
That's a whole other,
that's-
that's the next discussion.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
nothing's been done.
Rights.
No, we never got the rights.
Oh.
We never completed that.
oh, okay.
I believe my attorney was in touch with
He
him.
was never in touch.
He said he left a message or an email.
Anybody in this room will tell you, I never let messages go unanswered. He was never in touch.
So I will
with
make
me.
sure he gets in touch with you. I will actually send an email, because I have your email. To you.
Yeah, no, nobody was ever in touch. I had the thing sitting
No,
on my
definitely didn't
desk,
go
but
anywhere,
he
yeah.
probably never called.
Okay, so we're talking not about just those 3, you just said something
Well, we're gonna
about
eliminate these
14.
3, because this grass area, we're going to create a parking area here.
So when you say here, there, where is that on that?
Well, you don't see it in this
Oh,
picture. These 3 spots are right here where this guardrail is, so it's just.
So if you kind of picture those here, those 3, this is down, so they'd be like over here or something.
So you know where the platform is? There's the platform, the whole platform? It's right in front of the platform.
Yeah.
Oh,
Larry, so much fun. So, it would be,
See the 3 spots in that?
it would be this,
I'll leave it still now.
it would be this whole area.
Keep moving away.
oh, gosh, wow. And
But
that's,
you wouldn't touch the trees.
We're not touching the tree.
I just wanted to say that 14, 15, you're not.
Yeah, that's pretty dense between the road and down there. I mean,
Yeah,
there's not,
right now it's just weeds
And
and grass.
And those parking spaces would not be visible from,
No, you wouldn't, no. Could you? And I've spoken to the people at the Hudson, now they've been to my office, I spoke with the Ardsland Hudson Association, Nick Moore.
I mean, this is a winter view, but
Could you go back to the other picture for a second, the other view for just a second?
so,
hold on.
but those, so you're saying that those, the spot, they were part of your arrangement with Metro North, so
Yeah.
you can.
Yeah, they gave me the right to use that.
How far, up to the end of the platform or beyond the end
It's
of
to
the
the end of the
platform?
platform.
All along here?
Yeah, all homeless area. It's
You
about
said
4,000 square
unless
feet.
they need it though, right? Isn't that what you
Yeah,
said?
well, if they have an emergency, they said they might have lines under there, so they just want it to be, removable in case of emergency. So I'm assuming they don't want me to concrete it or
How long is your lease?
260 years.
Are you serious? This is, you got 260
That's
years?
probably what the underlying lease is with.
It's very healthy.
With New York Central or whatever they lease it from.
Okay, so you said you have an architectural firm that might be interested?
That's one point.
Yeah, that's someone that's looking at it. I also have Mercy College approached me about taking the whole building, and they want to do just the first floor, and they want to put a little cafe there for, I guess, when their students come off the train, or for people to use that are, they have the shuttles all day long, picking up the students.
The discussion, and they weren't coming to me to talk about this idea, but I've heard them talk about the notion that they'd like to make the exit point of the train almost like an extension of their campus. In other words, I realize it's a train station, but they kind of want it to be, since a lot of people arrive to their facility through that way, and frankly, we would like it that way.
And they're spending money to do the other.
Right, and then that's where the pathway comes in and all that, so.
But open to the public, not just.
Oh, no,
Right.
it's a feel, not a,
Right.
not a legal thing, you know.
Their Starbucks is open to the public too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah.
That's in Dobbsbury, yes. In the new building.
So we have.
So I heard you say something about retail, which I guess is where, you know, the cafe and that type of thing, is
Yeah,
that?
something of that sort. I mean, I don't think Amazon an open clothing store, but, you never know.
And not a theater, most likely.
How much space is there?
Building itself is
Well,
about,
that could use these other uses?
building's about 3,000 square feet, on 2 floors.
And that's-
It's small, and the post office takes this whole corner, so it's about almost 600 square feet. So right now,
Where's the post office may not stay, right?
well, they're staying.
Oh, they are staying?
I signed them up for 10-year lease.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they actually had no lease when I took over the building.
Huh.
And they've been there with no lease since 2000. And because of the Hudson House and everyone there, I renegotiated the lease with them.
So Hudson House wants the
Yeah.
post office.
Yeah, well, all their mailboxes are
Oh,
here.
okay.
They have no
They
mailboxes.
don't have mail delivered.
Yeah, they have no mail there, so they thought I was gonna get rid of the post office, so I made sure I secured that lease for them. And the only thing that they complain about is the hours, because they close early, and I make sure the building's closed, because I don't want anybody inside the building. But that would change if we put offices upstairs, because then they would extend the hours, because as long as somebody's there to lock the building, they could still, access their post office boxes. They might not have the access of, mail and stuff, but they could certainly.
Very interesting. So on the ground floor, besides the post office, there's actually room for a
There's,
quote cafe?
this area here.
And there's already a restroom and there's a fireplace, there's actually.
There's 2 restrooms, there's a
Be a
handicap one
sweet
there,
little
there's one
place.
here, there's 3 fireplaces in the building. I mean, it would be a nice little.
Wow.
Sorry, Sam.
I'm sure there's a lot of code issues with that.
What's that?
I'm sure there's a lot of code issues with that, but I'll let you deal with that.
That's not our
You got an old building like that? You kidding? But anyway, that's besides the point.
And this is the second floor, so, second floor, it was, I guess it was an apartment years ago, but then the MTA used it as their office when they were constructing all the,
Oh, that's right, yeah. When they were doing all their platform
Yeah, they used
upgrades.
it as their office.
So it's almost architect ready already.
Oh, yeah, it's ready to go. I mean, this issue, we have to talk about the DreamWorks.
And you've been in touch with Hudson House,
Yeah,
cooperative board and.
They came to my office, we all sat down. I sat down with one of the members of the board, but they go back and forth.
Never mentioned the brewery.
They want the brewery.
No, some people said they would like a little cafe, some place to
Yeah, I
go, they
said
can walk
that
to,
too.
and spend
Yeah.
some time,
Right.
Yeah, I'm just gonna ask him about a couple. I'm looking at this list of uses and, what about bank? Would you ever consider, is a bank make a possibility?
I don't know if a bank would want to be there, there's not much business for a bank to be there.
Okay. And you did retail stores other than the, a cafe?
I mean, I don't see that, but, you know, I don't wanna limit, if we're gonna do it, I really just don't wanna limit it.
Well,
Like with all the students, you could have a little, mobile electronics store.
Yeah, they say they could, if they could go and sell shirts for the school.
you know, and you know what, I think you're gonna have to have the same parking requirements, so that's gonna limit what's gonna be,
Yeah,
what
yeah,
can be there
that
anyway
would,
when
that
you
would,
meet
that would limit
have to
the,
meet the parking requirements. Let me ask the board this. And the parking requirements are pretty reasonable and standard, what's required for retail and business and stuff. But down here, and at the train station, there's no requirement for parking for restaurants. Because in the business district, it doesn't have them. I assume if there were, well, I don't know, would you want a parking requirement for restaurants there? I mean, on the one hand, they do generate parking, where they're gonna go, but on the other hand, if it's people that are gonna be getting their food coming and going from the train, they're not gonna have cars.
And I think too,
And off hours.
yeah, most of the restaurants, dinner's gonna be, you know, kind of after peak rush hour.
Plenty of
yeah,
parking.
there's a lot of spaces that car lots vacant.
Well, you don't see that.
As soon as the
I don't
commuters
see the
come on.
Yeah, that whole lot's open
Okay,
after a
Especially
certain
can't
hour.
be, you're not gonna have 60 staff working there either, so.
okay.
They
But
probably
those-
take the train.
Well, that's the thing, already from what you said, you maybe have, 4 people, 5 people upstairs, and a few people in the post office.
One person.
Oh, that's it.
One, and she's only there till 1:30.
Wow. That's
Um,
bankers out.
And I assume, right now, that there was a limitation on the railroad building here, that the building couldn't be, the exterior of the building couldn't be changed. We did put in a little escape valve that said minor changes could be made, as
This
you know, that
building-
ended up being kind of a big deal.
I actually have to follow historic.
Is that landmarked?
It's not landmarked, but I have to follow something in my lease that says if I touch anything, I have to follow historic.
So it would be a,
That's all, that's all set in the lease by the end.
Uh-oh. Your lease with MTA says you must maintain its historic exterior character.
yeah, but I mean, you might want to require that in the,
Yeah,
in the zoning as well,
In case
because
the
if for
building burns
some,
down.
or if for some reason
Well-
Metro North decided to sell it rather than lease it.
I have the option of buying.
Yeah, but, okay, you write these things for permanent, okay. If the board is disposed to do this, then I will have to, who's your, is David Barbuti
He's my
representing? Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna have to talk to him about the, various dimensional requirements. Oh. What about right now in the current train station with the restaurant allows outdoor seating, there's the outdoor seating already. Is that a possibility here?
I was gonna talk to you guys about that because, we have this little roof that we have to put steps. And see if we could do something, if they wanted to possibly put some tables out there and bring them in at night.
Okay, so it could have the same requirements that we have everything else, okay. Just in terms of a first craft at drafting, okay. Okay, I have that.
I think, assuming that we decide to go through this, I think we just reach out to a public and announce an house.
I did both. I think you have at least one representative of Hudson House here.
Oh, we do. Oh, we do.
Oh, 3, huh?
Oh.
A few, yeah.
I forgot who I met from
Probably met Bob Brown. Yeah.
Yes.
Sue is president of the board of directors. Right there.
Didn't even look that way.
Welcome your opinion.
Yeah, do you guys have any initial opinion on any of this? Since this is public participation, I guess.
2 minutes.
Where's the mic?
Yeah. There you go. There you go. Oh, we can hear you.
I think our concern was that
it's not some sort of retail business or something that's gonna cause a lot of traffic in and out of there. But our feeling when we read the description, having the post office and an office that's not going to have a lot of traffic and possibly a coffee shop sounds pretty doable.
Well, the criteria for special permit right now says that the planning board should require that no special permit be issued until the planning board is satisfied that the proposed use will preserve the exterior of the building, will have a minimal vehicular traffic impact on the surrounding area, and will satisfy the off-street parking requirements for the use. So that's a special permit standard that they would look at. They'd require, any kind of a traffic study and whatever to see how much traffic would be generated.
Please.
Yeah, I'm not here to throw a wet blanket on anything, but there are a couple of things. I've been looking at this thing for 3 years when I was on the board. This was kind of a project that I was involved in. And I'm also an ex-developer, so I'm used to dealing with parking and things like that. And only thing that troubles me about, not the only thing, but the main thing that troubles me is that now I think everybody who's been there knows that when people go to the post office, they pull their car up in front of the building. It's no problem. I mean, it's stopped in the right of way. They go in and get their mail, and they leave. And there's really no issue because most people get their mail after the main commuter traffic is gone. So that's not a problem. I think by adding a coffee place, it might add a little bit of traffic, but I personally don't see that as being a real major issue. But what I do see is two things. Number one, the parking is when you get rid of the three, because let me just start over. When you come down the hill, down towards the station, and you go into that parking lot, you got a 150-degree turn. And to negotiate a 150-degree turn to the right is not easy. And I'm not exactly sure whether it actually could be done, but, that's for some engineers to figure out. But the problem is all the parking is, almost like half a block away, let's just say, from the site, from the property. So, what we're concerned about, really, the main thing we're concerned about is any parking that seems available to somebody coming in there, people are going to go into it. They do that now at our place because there really isn't a whole lot of parking there. So, and the other thing that I personally am concerned about is that, and I think it was interesting what you brought up about the limited things that you could do there. My concern is that it would be easy to make a deal with an office deal with a contractor, and then have, because they're not paving the lot, to have the contractor use that lot for construction vehicles, all the pickups for superintendents, all that sort of thing. And there are a lot of things wrong with the gravel lot. I'm not going to get into it right now. I think you can figure out they're hard to plow. They're tough to negotiate in rain. They cause dust. And I think that people don't want to go park in a gravel lot. And so what happens is I personally think, I've only been involved in this situation once, but they're going to do what they can not to park on a gravel lot. The property he's talking about is very similar to the stuff that goes right behind the building you were just looking at. Those long, narrow strips that run along the track, that's what that he's talking about right there. It's really the same situation as here, other than the fact that that's public parking and his would be private parking. Given what he's talking about, I would say the general tenor of the building is positive. I'm concerned about the location of the parking, and I think we're kidding ourselves if we think that the people on the first floor who are going to stop and get coffee and things to go to the are actually going to go park over there in order to use the space. I mean, I know we would meet. it's possible, I'm not sure what the parking requirements, I don't know the square footages involved. But those are my issues, it's that parking. And it's basically parking is what it comes down to, because I think his ideas are sound.
Could I ask, weren't you that you were gonna make them into regular paid parking spaces, right?
Well, I can't pave it. I have to
can't
put
pave
in
it.
something that cleans, so I was thinking, I honestly thought about the snow plowing issue myself, so I was thinking maybe use grass paved or something similar, or, my architect was saying to use, permeable pavement. So we're just looking into that. We haven't designed anything yet, because whatever I design, I also have to run by the NTA as well.
Yeah.
Pavement means you go down stormwater reservoir.
I don't know, it's just something he mentioned the other day, so, the real issue wasn't, it being permeable, it was more so that they wanted it to be easily removable.
Yeah, see, for you to meet the parking space requirement, unless the board is a parking space is defined as a paved or surface space, which is accessible, so it would have to be, I mean, it could be permeable pavers, it could be some kind of pavers, but they would have to be improved parking spaces, so it couldn't just be in order to meet the code, yeah. I don't know if that opens your concern.
George Fricker, also on the board. You said that you spoke to people at Hudson House, and I think just in general. Right. So we would love to have a more substantive conversation with you over time, because obviously we're extremely interested in what happens down there. So if we could set up a dialogue, I think it'd be really useful for both of us. Mr. Schopper, I think you said that Mercy College had talked about it a little bit as an extension of its campus. We think of it as an extension of Hudson House. It's in the character of what used to be there historically. It's the only real remnant of the old club that was there. And obviously we get our mail there every day, so it's really very much a part of our everyday life. So we do consider it an extension of ourselves, and we battle Mercy College a little bit on that issue, I think. The state of the building is sad right now. It desperately needs work. And there are simple issues of keeping the rain out that aren't being attended to, that ought to be attended to. And we understand that from the point of view of having something positive economically would greatly benefit that. But I think there are basic maintenance issues that could be taken care of immediately that would go a long way to making us feel good about what's happening there. And then I think the comments about maintaining the historical character of the building are absolutely critical to us. You go down the Metro North on the railroad and you see one of these stations that's been turned into a cafe or a small restaurant, and it's got a huge duct coming out of the middle of the roof, and that's not what we're looking for. This is a real treasure for Irvington and for the whole area in our mind. So I think that's a really important thing that we would be looking for and asking about. I think everybody said that we're generally in favor of something happening because we think that something positive economically is going to save this station, and it's a really important landmark for all of us. I had a procedural question. I just wondered whether rezoning means that you're automatically in secret and you're going through a full secret process as a result of that. Does it force you into secret to do rezoning?
Yeah, you have to do secret, but I don't know what you mean by the whole secret process. I mean, the board could decide that it's not going to have any significant environmental impacts.
And then you do
that
the
aren't-
neg deck, and then off you go.
Yeah, if the board determines that there's not going to be any adverse impacts that are unmitigated, they could neg deck it. If they think that there might be positive impacts, then they could require an EIS. I mean, I doubt you would do an EIS on a project this size, but it depends on.
At the rezoning level, anyway.
Yeah.
Not at the rezoning level. The board's not going to be presented with plans about a parking lot or anything else. That's something that would be a site development.
Yeah,
plan
but you,
for the
but,
planning board.
Yeah, but you would have to do the secret.
For rezoning.
For rezoning,
To
sure,
rezone it.
sure.
No, to rezone it, and in doing that, you have to bear in mind what a build-out
Sure.
would be, what a full build-out
Right.
would be. But yeah, of course, yeah.
But are we rezoning, or we're just defining, we're keeping it as a railroad district, right?
Yeah,
But it's changing the zoning. It's
Changing the
zoning
regulations,
code. It's rezoning the uses for this particular building. Yeah.
Different than the other agenda item, which was just moving the
Right.
line, you know. This is changing the regulations underneath.
In general, I think our feeling is there's a kind of win-win solution here, or maybe it's win-win-win if we wrap Mercy College in. So we'd like to work collaboratively with everybody to make that happen.
I would certainly be as strong as this gentleman is, and you have indicated you want to anyway, on preserving the historic nature of that building. I think you're right, it's incredibly important. So it sounds like that's something that most people
I have no plan
on
to
the
change
table
it.
are.
No plan to change it.
Right.
And I could put a duck on the roof.
No.
I have one other question.
It might be on the point.
Did you need to have a lot split on that little building down to where the bazaar is now in order to do a zone change? You have to actually have a lot split because he's going to have to split this lot off. And I'm wondering, is that part of the process?
Oh, that lot existed, I mean, so what, you're part of another lot, then I guess you have to get subdivision.
This is part of that whole train area. It's not split as its own.
But you have to have a tax lot in order
It's all the way down. This building's not owned by FTA. It was sold to someone privately. It's
Yeah.
actually, it's very strange. It's like right up to the property line or something. Then it becomes FTA. So this is a private building.
Oh, I see.
It's not-
Yeah,
this
no,
is
no,
not
if he's
FTA.
not owning, he's just leasing it, so no.
Well, I was under the impression that when you had a long-term lease, it was the same thing as ownership in New York.
But it's still all one parcel, so I don't think you would need to go through a subdivision.
I'm just curious.
My lease actually states that the only time I would have to do a subdivision is if we do a sale. They exercise their option to purchase, and then that transfers to me, that I have to
Right,
subdivide.
'cause it's
if
not
I have
all
to
in one
subdivide-
ownership.
If I have to subdivide this parcel from.
Right.
So procedurally,
What would
we
happen
ask for
next?
a formal petition, is that how it works? Doesn't have to be formal?
It doesn't have to be a petition.
It doesn't have to be, you could, if you want to ask me to draft something, or maybe you want to wait until after they meet with Hudson House, because other things might come up. I mean, I have enough of an idea based on what's there now to redraft something. I suppose I could just have a working draft, and that's even something Hudson House,
That could be the.
and then Hudson House can react to it. It might be more helpful than just,
One way to do it.
yeah.
So I go back to the portico issue, that would just, I
The
don't
two
know.
lawyers have to talk.
What
The
was
two
that?
lawyers have to talk.
Okay.
So what's the issue, since nobody's ever been in touch with me about it?
The issue is, well,
Over our property.
well, right.
Is
First-
it there now?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
First of all,
Never left.
it never left, right? So the portico was put up.
Yeah, but it's-
I don't think John Michael is interested in keeping it up for the long term because it's a maintenance issue or liability issue, whatever. It's also physically over village property, so it's a bit sticky that way. And we encouraged and got him to allow it to remain up without the movie studio taking it down. And the understanding is that we would work out some arrangement for the portico to continue to remain where it is, whether it's a sharing of liability, a transferring of liability. That's where the lawyers have to talk.
I believe what it was the neighborhood wanted.
Yeah,
they wanted-
yes.
Oh, yeah.
The board's well aware of
Yeah,
that.
so,
So we have to close the loop to make it happen. It's, obviously it's still up, but I mean, right now it's pretty undefined as to.
Yeah, because right now it's
anything
actually
happens.
not attached to my building. It's freestanding.
Over village property.
Over village property, so we'd like to anchor it, so it
it sounds like a good idea.
And it's, when we've talked about the possibility of making this an easement, I guess.
That's where, they just have to work it out.
I thought what we were trying to do tonight is just to see if the board was in favor of this in concept,
Yes.
because it obviously needs to be.
Hashed out, yeah.
Yeah, and certainly I would say yes. I think it sounds like a very sensible approach. And I love the fact that you're starting by talking with the neighbors and starting there instead of coming with like this whole full blown. So this is going to take a while. I think we should have a working draft as a means of discussion going forward. But I think this could be, whichever one of you said, a win-win-win situation.
Very good.
Do you have an extra set of drawings or a scheme or anything?
This is the survey, you can have this. You can have all this.
Okay, just because in terms of drawing up physical stuff, it'll be a little bit easier to
Sorry. Wake everyone up.
Whatever your presentation is.
Oh, I don't
She's good.
Oh, are they?
This is the drawing, this is the layout of the building.
Oh, okay, you know what, it could be helpful, thanks.
Larry, do you have the context of the people that were speaking here? I mean, you're Karen, and you're
I'm Jim Lyden.
Jim Light.
George Sheeper-Decker.
Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
George is the live-in architect.
Whoa.
We're supposed to reveal that. So I'm okay with an architect's office.
Yeah, I'll get it. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks very much.
Take care.
Thank you.
Proposed sign law, local law?
Landscape registry.
Oh, yeah. You're gonna want to take that one off, right?
Come on.
Take another hour. We'll give our attorney 2 minutes.
Wait, your
Review
attorney
proposed-
already did her work, it's up to you.
Review of
Tell me
proposed
what you
landscape
think of it.
registration logo law.
Oh, I
So we're on the registration for land.
Yes.
And this it reflects the multiple conversations we've already had about this, right?
Yes.
The one thing you had added, saying, wondering how we, is B, no, I'm sorry, it's E, residents under the age of 18 and over 60, basically.
Yeah, wait a minute, I don't think we, no, we never talked about it, Beth. You guys never
No,
saw
we
this.
I never saw this until right now.
There was never draft.
We talked
just
about it conceptually.
And I suggested these are the things, so I think you should read it carefully, because this is really the first time you saw a law on this.
What? I mean, I have two issues. Are we gonna talk about it? Because I'm waiting for Janice, or?
I'm sorry,
I said I had two issues, and one of them was yours. Maybe.
Okay. So, well, it sounds like we need to read it.
I just haven't read this yet, I'm so sorry. I just catch it now.
You get mailed to everyone?
Yeah, but whatever. I mean,
Did you
it's
want
attached to the agenda.
It's,
so.
you know, it's not that long, right?
No,
But
it's
it
not.
just
Actually, exactly. It's
look
two
through it
pages.
now, it's very,
That's
And
what I'm
it's nothing new,
What?
except for that one point.
well,
Well, it's new. It's the first time we've seen the whole thing, yeah. The concept's not new, but the draft law is.
Exactly.
So, I guess the one thing that I had a concern about is by the definition of landscaper. It does encompass now also people who are not necessarily what you would consider landscapers, but landscape designers and landscape architects. So I think we have to be clear about what we're talking about, because in general, many of those folks don't do any kind of lawn care whatsoever. Right? But they do tree care, arborists. So you got to be a little bit careful about making this too broad of a definition. And that's what my concern is.
You have to actually be operating on.
Well, I mean, landscape design.
yeah, I understand, it's a good point. I'll look around for some other definitions.
So people that are doing like arborists, and people that are not actually mowing and blowing.
Right,
you know,
yeah.
I mean, there's got to be some way to,
You mean lawn, lawn workers. But, yeah, but okay.
And not landscape designers. as
Right,
is the
because
case.
generally, unless they do pick up a machine, a
Right.
blower, and if they're doing maintenance at that point, so the key is really kind of the maintenance side of it, that if they're using such equipment for maintenance.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
And the only other thing I thought about was I wasn't comfortable with E as a built-in exception. I mean, you know, why can't they just come in and ask for an exception?
Okay, but it doesn't have to go
I don't
there.
mind having an exception, I just don't know what
I'm
should be
not-
on it.
Obviously, I'm not a proponent, you know, if you don't want to know what to take it up, but I'm just thinking about, you know, the neighborhood kid who's, you know, making a few bucks by mowing the lawn. I mean, I don't think they should have to come in for a landscape license.
No, but maybe they just, yeah.
And you know what, I don't want to, you would think, what kind of a, you know, who would give them a ticket, but every once in a while you see those stories on the
Yeah, the
paper
lemonade
about kids
stand,
getting arrested for not having licenses for their lemonade stands. You know, I don't think you're gonna do that, but.
That's our next crackdown.
In the streets of Denver and front.
We also want to make sure we're not allowing the enterprising 16-year-old with the
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
gigantic leaf blower to come in.
Well, you know what, you could just leave it out and just hope that, you know, people have the sense not to
And if it ends
enforce
up
it
in
against
court.
a 13-year-old, you know.
Well, you give an
You're such an optimist.
I mean, the thing is, it does include handicapped folks, and it does include, you know, seniors, so I almost feel like, and I'm gonna say this, I don't know that anyone who's a senior, let's say 60 years plus,
Is
is gonna be running a business doing this.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna be
I don't
owners
think
of their property, that's,
Yeah.
Or
sorry.
did you put something in about it and it's not their primary occupation or something? So it's the kid on the weekend, not the kid, who, as Janet's saying, that actually bought a pickup truck and has two guys that help him.
Well, but they're performing this service as individuals as part of this,
That's true.
so it's not gonna let them be too much of an
True.
Well, no, it's an individual, no, you could be an individual with your with nice equipment, it's just you. It's
And
not
an
everybody
electric
working with you, yeah.
Gets the leaves.
I mean, I agree, I took this from Terry Town. I can't imagine, you know,
Can't we just
Somebody
let the
posted-
police know that they shouldn't be enforcing against?
well, that's what
High
I
school
just
kids.
said. I think we
Maybe
could
this
just
is
leave
just-
it out and rely on sensible
Inviting a problem that
enforcement.
doesn't
You
exist.
see the kid with a rake is not.
You know what, if it,
If it
yeah,
comes up, we can always add it in the future.
I would say then I would take that out, okay.
So a better definition and leaving that out.
So we want them to certify, what do we say?
Register.
And it shall state that the landscaper, the form doesn't state that, doesn't the landscaper have to initial or sign off on it? You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Well, they'd have to sign it, yeah. Oh,
normally that's done like with a little check or signature box, like on the Westchester thing,
Yeah.
if they
Well,
want.
I mean, you're gonna come up with, you're gonna develop the form, the village is gonna develop the form, and I
So
would
it's
think
kind
it
of
would
a-
say, you know, I've read it, whatever.
Okay, so it's like self-certification.
They don't have to spell out the form, obviously, but we have to think about it carefully. It just doesn't get reflected in this law.
Yeah, how it's, yeah, like right now, I mean, we don't have the, you know,
Besides,
what's in the forms to get a, you know, resident parking permit, you know, other than the general requirements, so it would just be the general requirements, and it's probably better that way, because then you can change it, you know, as things become relevant and not relevant.
So the other question is, we asked them to say that they've read about leaf blower law. How about we ask them, here's the slippery slope, what about that they've read materials about plugging the needle?
Whatever.
In other words, I'm saying it's going to be a handle for a couple of village initiatives, so it's just not leaf blower.
You know what, and say, and other relevant,
Yes.
other relevant, village laws and policies.
Yeah, sure, why not, something, I think that's,
Yeah, leave it open to
At least it-
the hot topics.
We want to make sure they understand zoning and.
Relevant.
you can use a leaf blower in the Ardsley Railroad zone.
Valid and current
Westchester County Home Improvement License, right? I think it's good with those two things.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, good, all right.
You're okay with the fine? I missed the fine to be done
think
for
it's great.
peddler's license.
I find it's interesting that peddler's license looks distortedly person charge.
Yeah, I don't know.
You take our peddling seriously here.
That's specific. You don't want any kind of
Yeah, exactly.
a drink food truck operator.
And you're okay with the fee, $25? I mean,
we
even
didn't
if
want
it's
to
got
say
6
that.
copies?
Yep.
What?
We didn't want to make it
It's one, for one, not for every, right?
For the company.
It's
It's for the company, so
Or
if
they
they've got 6 trucks, it's still $25. If they have 1 truck, it's 25. Very nice.
If we've had, yeah, if we've had more trucks, but we've got the person who's actually doing this and reading it, and that's. we've
Tags
got
aren't that
6
expensive.
trucks who are covered rather than.
That's what we really care
Right.
about.
We want them to know the situation, read the rules.
So the question I do have about it is what constitutes an offense? Is it each individual person using a blower, or is it an aggregate event that happened at a particular time of day? You know what I'm saying?
This is if they don't have a license, right?
Yeah, but the operative
this
thing
is
is no
to enforce
landscaper
that.
shall advertise, operate,
No,
or provide services unless the landscapers register.
Yeah, so if you're not registered, you get.
So, same
And
thing,
you've gotta
if
show
if there's 6 guys working for, whatever,
One
tree, it's
truck,
still
yeah.
1 violation.
But every day could be a new violation.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Is that,
Yeah, if you
It
come back
could
the
be,
next
but
day-
then you have to give a ticket every day.
well, that would get them, at this rate, they would pay attention pretty quickly.
I think so.
Gotta catch them.
Yeah. So we need to have landscape or detection cameras in the trees that are noise activated.
Review proposed sign code at the local.
Okay, so you want me to,
Yeah.
Yes,
okay, and then what,
Just say yes.
Yes.
Just say yes.
Yes.
No, I'm kidding.
no, when do you want to call for the local one?
I thought we were trying to get this done kind of as soon as possible, just sort
The
of.
registration, yeah.
Okay, so you could do it at,
We could call for it the next meeting at
August 21st.
August
Well, it's
21st.
kind of a moot point because you don't have to register until February 1st, right?
You'll be in charge of that meeting.
No, that's comfortable though. So you do the public hearing in September, you pass the law, gives us time to get tags, get forms created and all that.
This seems pretty
That's
straightforward.
actually perfect timing.
After we get the revised law, we can share.
well, wait a minute, then, so we want an effective date.
Yeah.
Shall, take effect, just, let's say December 31st, 2017, right?
Sure,
That gives somebody a month to register.
yeah.
That's fine.
December 31st.
And if you register, first 10 people to register get lollipops.
They get gold stickers.
You're saying we're putting you in charge of the meeting next week?
Yeah.
And now we just interrupt yourself. I've been saying that all day.
Thank you.
All right, Mark, that's enough. Okay.
I'm sorry, but I mean, weren't you pretty clear about the fact that we
Yes.
weren't supposed to just
Yes.
relitigate the same issues?
Right.
And it was,
Proposed local sign code, local law.
Okay, I think I better go through this.
can't we just say yes?
All in favor? We'll pass it tonight. Can we pass it?
Okay, I'll go through and explain to you what each of the changes are, okay?
But Ed agrees to these.
What?
Yes.
These are from Ed, right? You and Ed work together on these?
Yes, the three of them.
And Mark,
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh,
And Larry.
I was just along for the
a
ride.
lot of these stuff, a lot of it came from Mark, some came from Ed. Ed's comfortable with
So we
all
better
of
really
them.
pay attention to give her Mark.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
Okay.
Putting in double time.
Connie and I and Ed,
Did the walk around?
and weren't you there too?
Larry.
Did the
Walk
around?
Okay,
No.
let's see what it is you walked around. What are we doing?
Okay, section 1 is nothing, just lowercasing something, okay. Then section 2, remember everybody was saying, well, what about if it's a blackboard and there's nothing on it at the time? So then So now sign is defined as any material, structure, or device containing or composed of letters, pictures, or symbols, or upon which letters, pictures, or symbols are placed. So it would have some Latin, okay. And then it clarifies that a video or computer screen or digital display designed or used for the purpose of attracting or that does attract the attention of the public to the subject matter on the screen shall be considered a sign. Section 3 defines temporary sign, and had a big concern that temporary sign wasn't defined, and it says that temporary signs are covered by the code, and some people were using it as an exception that swallowed the whole. So this defines a temporary sign as any sign, handbill, or poster that's placed for a limited period of time not to exceed 30 days to advertise or announce a specific event or occurrence. And then there's some examples. So you couldn't have, close out sale and have it up there for 6 months.
Could I just ask a devil's advocate question as we're talking about this one particular item?
Yeah.
I'm a realtor. I've got those frames in the window with property. I change each one. I change the picture in each one every 29 days. Are those temporary?
Is it?
Does it really matter?
Well, because then they're not covered. They're not covered by the elimination clause, are they?
Yeah, I mean, should we maybe put temporary signs that not include?
Well, let's just go through this whole thing. Can we come back to this then?
Yeah, you know what? I'm having a hard time picturing what it would look like. You know what I mean? In this, those kinds of signs in the.
Well, they're in the windows right now.
Yeah. But there's a bigger display board, right?
The way they are kind of.
And then the pictures are put on, aren't they?
No, some of them are like that, but some are just like frames like this that are on wire that goes down, and there's 1 frame, 2 frame, 3 frame, and the frames are actually self-contained. They have an image in them, and they are usually backlit.
Yeah, but they're in a frame, so wouldn't there be, oh, I see.
But they change.
The structure upon which letters, pictures, or symbols are placed, so that would make it a sign.
Yeah, it is a structure.
And then, let's see, any sign is placed for a limited period of time to advertise or announce for a specific event or occurrence.
I mean, the other thing I can think
The
is.
structure itself. The structure itself is in place for a limited period of
Yeah,
time.
you have to make.
The items on it, the content is limited, but
Yeah, but they're just defined signs.
yeah, right.
But this is temporary sign, which I think is, a temporary sign is a kind of sign, so.
Sure, but the types of signs he's talking about aren't placed for a limited period of time. The
No,
frame,
I mean, the content is.
the content is, but the
Right,
frame
so
structure
you're
is
gonna
not.
always be showing a picture of a
So-
house for sale, it just might change which
Yeah.
house is for sale. So
Yeah.
I think that.
It's a permanent
it's
sign.
just
Sort of the
permanent.
equivalent of the blackboard.
Right, it's a permanent sign that you might erase
As
a
long
few
as you
letters
feel
every
it's
so often.
clear, because that's one of, I just realized that was one of Ed's big problems, right? Because the realtors are just pushing back on those things as temporary.
Are they?
Yeah. Or not
Well,
signs, I don't know.
We
now,
can
see, I don't
specifically
remember anybody raising that issue with that in the meeting.
What?
Does the village code say no temporary signs are allowed?
No?
No.
Right now.
But
No, for
you
some
didn't,
period of
there
time.
wasn't, I mean, it would have been helpful to raise that at the meeting with that there.
No, I never thought of it as
Yeah.
something that was a gotcha until we were reading these things together right now. It just started.
Signs, no. Do you have one of these? Signs, no. Right now, the part about temporary signs just says.
Sign is placed for a limited period of time.
Yeah, temporary signs were allowed are allowed by the existing code. It's just that the only way we described them was that they were made of cardboard, paper, canvas, or other materials. But now we're putting a more precise definition.
They don't require a permit, they're,
No.
there's a limit on how much coverage they can have, but they don't need a permit. Yeah, you know, I think, well,
What do we think about that? 'Cause I think there might be a way to do it where you define,
Signs not requiring.
you know, the structural piece of it.
I mean, you know what we could do, if the real estate agents are giving them a hard time
Put it
and saying
specifically
they're
in there.
temporary signs, say it, this shall not include real estate sign or whatever,
Yeah.
however you would
Instead of
describe.
permanently affixed
I think
to
that's
tacitly,
what it
yeah.
is.
I think that's the easiest way to do it, because
Yeah.
those are the ones we're thinking of.
Because we don't, what we're saying is they're not temporary,
They're there all the time.
they're there all the time, it's just the particular image of the houses that change. Because if they sell it, they don't want it in the window anymore.
Yeah. I'll take a, but the reason I'm saying I wanna look at it is to, I need to look at it to figure out how you would describe it.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Okay.
So you don't need a permit if you have a temporary sign.
Yeah, this is
that's
not, actually,
exceed
this is,
30%.
section 4 is not a change. It's just that a recognition that temporary signs might be made of something other than cardboard, you know, so.
As long as it's not exceeding 30%.
Okay, the point on section 5 is, okay, it says signs can be displayed on the building, on an awning or window, within 4 feet of a window, and should project no farther than 3 inches beyond the face of the building. Where, however, the building has an eave overhang of more than 1 foot, the sign may hang from the eave. This ended up being a problem at the train station, where they wanted a sign to hang on the eave, and then they also wanted a sign that projected, and the way the code was written before, they could, Ed interpreted it as saying they could only have one sign. You could either have the one projecting out from the building or projecting perpendicular to the building. And this says if you've got a big eave hanging it, and that would not count as your perpendicular sign.
And that's basically only the 2 railroad stations.
Yeah, I think so. Conceivably, it could happen someplace else, but that's the only place it was an issue.
Yeah.
Okay,
And the issue about the 4 feet behind a window was because there was some concern about people trying to stack things in behind the window, but saying it wasn't
It's not in the window, yeah, it's just on, just set back. So we decided 4 feet is the window area.
and then section 7, this is where you can put a sign between the building and the front property line when the building set back a certain amount. And there was a limitation on the area. This also puts a limitation on height. It can't exceed 10 feet in height. All right, section 8 just adds to the business district of railroad and waterfront districts because they both have businesses in it. Same thing with section 9. 10. Yeah, aren't generally permitted. That said, this general prohibition shall not apply to video or computer screens or digital displays. Because they are flashing, moving, changing. Okay. Then section
Can I just say, would it be helpful there that you put examples?
of video and computer
Yeah,
screens or
what
digital
do we,
displays.
which kind of flashing, moving, fluttering, changing, or intermittently illuminated signs we're trying to not permit, and how do we differentiate them from the video computer screens? Maybe this is
Well,
not.
no, video and computer screens you can have, they're not considered flashing moving. Flashing, you know what flashing moving signs are.
Open, open, open.
Yeah, or those things, you know, sometimes they go like.
No.
That's what's
Yeah,
not
maybe
allowed.
it's coming.
See, that was what was not allowed, and Mark had a concern because, I think it was Mark, that raised a concern about the video and digital displays, that those are
That could be,
fluttering.
right, that could be interpreted as,
Okay, so this is just, this is just taking this out of that.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, Connie,
it's just in the
to your-
21st century,
to
is
your
what it does.
question,
Right.
Open or coffee with those are digital displays, they're LEDs, so those are allowed currently.
Do we want that?
But it does say if permitted, so there's still an overview by the ARB if it finds that it otherwise meets the purposes of this article and the general standards in this section. So
No, but it does say this general prohibition shall not apply to video or computer screens or digital displays. I thought by digital displays, you meant like the computer screens. You're saying that the smoke coming out of a coffee cup is a digital display?
no, the ones that are LED based, like the ones that are along Main Street that say open, or coffee with fake smoke done in LEDs.
Why is that a digital display?
Because it's digital.
Is LEDs digital? Well, then just say shall not apply to video or computer screens.
Because then we also talked about the little crawling,
Digital displays, but not smoking coffee cups. I mean,
see, that's the thing.
Well, can you describe it as,
Pizza, that's okay.
can you describe it with the other language that you use, LED, I mean, make it so specific that it allows the crawl.
My first
but-
question, what are we talking
Right.
about?
I thought it was kind of helpful to know that the barbecue
So
place
I-
was open tonight.
So-
Just saying.
However you describe it, the coffee open, those signs that are what I would call
Animated.
flashing and fluttering. Animated, yeah, that's a good word, should not be allowed, in my opinion. Whereas a crawl, informational crawl would be fine. I think that would be, like information like.
Like in live wire.
Yeah,
I would almost go the other way.
Oh.
I'd rather have just an open sign that you can see from across the street. Just like
Because
flashing.
OPEN, open.
No, to me, if it's just a lit open sign,
That's fine.
The kind of light is what, then digital display is the wrong word. I don't think there must be another word that would describe what you're talking about. Like if, let's say, one of the finance places was running, a
it's a
thing
ticker.
with the Dow
It's a
Jones.
digital display, it just has very low resolution compared to a screen like this, that's all. Those little LED displays are digital displays, they just have very low resolution. They're very pixelated.
It sounds like there are
That's
two
all.
issues that we're
It's the
not,
same thing.
not all of us are entirely clear what each of these things specifically means. But there's also, I think, some disagreement about what we should and should not allow.
Well, we did have this checklist, so we should probably go through each type of thing.
Not tonight.
No, but that's what we need to do, though, to decide if we all agree that we need certain types of.
Yeah, I think this is still too general and not, because there's so many moving parts here. It's the degree of resolution is going to affect the appearance of a sign in the window.
We are back to where we were. This is a little bit of Groundhog Day, but I don't mind.
So the,
No, what? I mean,
I'm not
I
criticizing.
no. I'm saying, don't leave it with me, because I don't know what you're talking
No,
about.
we have to talk. That's
Right.
we have to have another.
A solid LED sign's fine, it's just the changes.
so if it's the.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I'm not. I don't know what we're saying.
Because flashing, moving, fluttering, changing are intermittently illuminated. So if it changes, we're saying don't allow it.
That would disallow the ticker.
Yes.
The
Well, wait a
information.
minute. It says they're generally not permitted, except that the ARB may permit it if it finds that it otherwise meets the purposes of this article and the general standards in this section. So the ticker would.
So
But
maybe we don't
Connie
need
thinks
to.
so why don't you just, I thought the big concern was the video or computer screen. So why don't you say this general prohibition shall not apply to video or computer screens? And then those other digital displays you're talking about.
Fine.
The ARB.
As long as we're clear that people aren't going to play the game with the computer screen, that
Flashes like crazy.
well,
But then the open sign at the barbecue place that we just saw wouldn't be permitted.
But
That one doesn't flash.
Doesn't matter.
No, but that's
I
okay.
think if as long as it's not
I
flashing.
don't think it matters the way
fluttering,
you described it.
No. What, and it's just a sign that says open?
Yeah, that's okay.
That's fine.
It's
We're
okay.
As long as
The
it's
prohibition is on flashing
Can't
light,
flash or
fluttering,
change.
changing, or
Right.
intermittently
So if it switches to
illuminated.
closed, it's not allowed.
Okay, so we can
This
have
is
open
not
one that runs
signs.
a
Yeah.
red light with the
You do
place
it one across the street or the place is closed, so it's nice to have an open sign.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's just a,
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna take out or digital displays and have it be in the general.
Great.
Okay.
Let's go with that.
But it's general.
As long as I can see the barbecue places open.
Right.
Yeah, no, there's not
Open is
fluttering.
fine. Open is good. The whole
Private
fashion
signs
neon
are
is
okay.
You want it to
beautiful.
be smoky though, so you can see like how far away, when it goes white, you know, the barbecue ready.
The barbecue sign is great.
Okay, the next one adds a paragraph to the ARB guidelines. Says the brilliance, degree, intensity, and type of illumination shall be the minimum necessary for the purpose of such illumination, bright enough to indicate it's open,
Oh, good.
consistent with public
Relieved.
safety and welfare.
Now, what about, you got a neighbor across the street complaining that it's
Oh, yeah,
overly
we've
bright?
had that.
Because we've had that before.
Yes.
We've had that with, I think, both the gas station and with the nail salon.
The nail salon.
Okay, so then,
It was approved, it was approved.
yeah,
So, but that would be a criteria now that ARB could look at, to say,
yeah,
If they
you
say,
gotta trim down the intensity of the,
right, although once it's approved,
I know, but maybe part of the approval process is to see if the sign has multiple
Right.
settings.
right, okay. Then 12 is nothing. 13 is just about the scale. All the things on 13 are the scale is there for the building department.
and that's easier for the business owner to do, the way it's, the new language makes it somewhat simpler for them.
No,
No change.
doesn't make, it doesn't make any sense, just clarify.
Okay.
It's a reasonable scale.
Well, thank you all for doing all that work on that. It's always impossible to get so into the weeds and all the
So into like flashing, moving.
yes.
That's it.
Great.
Report on wayfinding sign color survey.
Well, I know this is a little anticlimactic, but the results are attached here. So we did a survey. As we last discussed, the board was looking for some opinions from the community. There was a bit of disagreement on the board as to what the color of the wayfinding signs should be. And
Mark voted 30 times.
yeah, we have to do an investigation, I think.
I don't even think I voted once.
I didn't either.
And the results were that the blue signs were preferred, although there was some indication that people, if the green was slightly different, if it was darker, was primarily the concern, that they may have voted green instead of blue. But it didn't look like by the numbers that it would have been enough to overcome the blue vote.
A lot of people said they liked the blue because it's the river.
It doesn't matter why they said, it looks like blue one, great.
Okay, so.
I would have preferred green, but blue one, I don't know why we need to continue to.
So the going forward, how it gets implemented is probably a fairly long-term process. So first of all, there's no money for it at this point. We just want to get this report finalized. We'll have it. We'll use it when we can, and we'll figure out a way of implementing it at some point. I'm not making any suggestions about that yet. But I just wanted to report back. That's what the results were. We're going to finalize the report based on that.
Thank you for using all those modalities to reach out to people to allow them to respond in different ways. And I see the same thing happening with the, what was posted today.
Bed and breakfast.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
think that's great.
So I noticed that the sign for the Station Road project, isn't that blue?
It is blue, right? Yes.
With a green logo.
People said they couldn't read it because it was a blue sign. So I got. Actually, have you ever had any feedback on the Station Road closure? I was so worried that
No.
it was going to be pitchforks.
Right.
Village Hall.
No, I think, the contractor has been out in the field in the first few days. They dealt with, cars coming and turning around because the signage wasn't being paid attention to. There were some pedestrians that were walking through the area or wanting to walk through the area that they did allow through the area on the first day, but advised them that going forward you won't be able to come through here. So there's a little bit of a learning process, but it's more out in the field as opposed to, people with pitchforks. We
I
have.
didn't get a single email, so I was
Yeah, I think.
happily surprised.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
Well, I did my part by sending out.
Oh, it helps.
I did my part by sending out preliminary emails to Spiral Park.
Oh,
So
Right.
smart.
They're all pretty much prepared.
Yep. So,
I
so
will
far
make
so
a
good.
motion to adjourn to executive session regarding personnel matter and a volunteer personnel matter.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.